Okay, and welcome Urs to Scouted by Gravy. Thank you for joining us on this special interview. And I'm really excited to talk to you about yeastus. So, why? I think my first question is obviously about you and about yeastus. You know what yeastus is doing, and what role you are playing in its growth and all the challenges that yeastus is solving. So, can you take me through this and basically I'm not very familiar with the industry, so I'd like to understand what Eastus is doing. In like describe it to me like a common man, and like I'm not aware of the industry, so yeah.
Yes, yeah, thanks, Shabbat, for inviting me. And it's a great opportunity for us to obviously present, and it's a fantastic platform that you have. So, really looking forward to this interview. Yeah, so we founded the company 4.5 years ago, myself and my co-founder Daniel. My role in YeastUp is to cover the strategy, the financing, and sort of the overall complex contracts that we sign as a B2B company. And Daniel is running R&D, marketing, and operations. And so we came together through a common friend, and Daniel, who is also a former serial entrepreneur, very familiar in the food industry with proteins, and a former brewer actually. So he had the business idea of extracting ingredients out of yeast cells. Yeast is an essential ingredient for brewing beer. There is a very high side stream coming from that process. So every day, 10,000 tons of brewer spent yeast becomes available globally. And at the moment, this side stream is not being used and upcycled the way it should. It's ending up in pig farms. But we have basically invested over 10 years of R&D, person years of R&D, to find a way how we can extract essential ingredients out of the yeast cell. Now, why have we chosen yeast? Obviously, we could have chosen other raw materials, but the density and the quality of the ingredients is actually better than with any other raw material. So with regards to the density, a yeast cell consists of about 50% protein and 30% fibers, and that gives us a much higher yield opportunity than when we would, for example, do a plant-based raw material. But also the quality is really differentiating. When we speak about the protein, for example, we have a protein digestibility score of 1, which is superior to all other alternative proteins. Soy is coming close to that, but with that digestibility score, we are able to provide to consumers a vegan alternative that has actually the quality of egg white. And for our health, for our gut, for our digestibility, this is, I think, the next generation of ingredients. Besides the protein, because everybody speaks about protein, we are also extracting essential fibers, beta-glucan and mannan, and they have over 200 set health claims. And we believe there is a next wave of ingredients coming towards us, which is focusing on the health of consumers and the health contribution by eating, the right ingredients. And fibers are absolutely essential besides the proteins. And with that, we have basically all the three ingredients that you need to live
Mhm.
healthy and in a good way going forward.
It really sounds exciting, and I see you're not just solving the food alternative food problem, but you're also reusing the waste of a very big industry. So it's
Yeah.
also the circular economy, and it all comes together very nicely. So I really like this approach. So it's like, what was the challenge of making this possible? So I'm mostly talking about the technology side of things. So how did your team make it possible to extract this much protein and fibers from yeast?
Yes. Well, I mean, When you look at industrial extraction, typically, the companies focus on one main ingredient to take from a raw material, and then whatever is left over, they try to do something with the rest at as good as they can. Our ambition was different. We said we want to isolate three ingredients in one industrial process. That means you cannot just focus on one thing. You need to have the residual part of that. What comes after the first extraction. You need to have that residual part such that you can still extract also the other two. And
Mhm.
in that sense, the complexity to keep that industrial process also scalable is fairly high. You have to treat the yeast also very sensitively. Um, it's a microorganism, so at some point in the process, you have to make it inactive, which is also not an easy step, especially as you still want to keep the functional protein native. So the inactivation of yeast and also the extraction of several ingredients was certainly two process challenges that we had and successfully resolved with trade secrets, also with IP that we filed. And now we are successfully scaling. So we are setting up our first large scale factory with 700 tons of output per year. So we can really say that we overcame most, if not all, of the engineering challenges in that extraction process.
That's amazing to hear. Then, and I totally relate with the with what you mentioned that other industry they usually focus on one ingredient, so that makes the manufacturing process very simpler for them. But in your case, you needed to make the process in a way so that you're able to extract all the three ingredient you're focusing on, and that added to the complexity of the process. Uh,
Yes,
and
correct.
uh, it's amazing news that you're already scaling up, and like seeing that you're not a old and you're relatively very new startup in food and beverage industry, and scaling up usually becomes the one another biggest challenge. So, and again, my upcoming questions were about going to be about this as well, like what are the scaling challenges you are facing. So I'd love to hear about those as well. So now that you've solved the technical
Yes,
challenge, so what's next
yes.
on the horizon related to scaling?
Yes, scaling is another ball game. It's I would say the Champions League.
Hmm.
So you can play good football, but you will actually be in the Champions League when you successfully scale. And I think successful scaling means for me, especially in today's world, two things. First, obviously, you need to have consistent and high quality of your ingredients that come out of it. That is essential to sell fundamentally. But secondly, given that it's very difficult for startups to raise substantial investments, and also it's not necessarily in the interest of startups to have too much equity because of the
Hmm.
dilution effects, you need to scale up in a capex light way. And what I mean with that, what we did is we basically went into a former dairy plant who was subcritical in mass. So they closed, unfortunately, last, a good 1.5 years ago. Um, and we were able, by going in there, not just to use the facility and to basically leapfrog the way in our scaling, but also we were able to use quite a bit of the infrastructure that was already there. And that gave us two advantages. One is much less upfront investments needed. But secondly, also time-wise, obviously we can prepare a factory, within less than 12 months.
Hmm.
And we are now already thinking for the next, let's say, next steps, and we are actually looking for further dairy plants in Europe, especially with primary focus, to basically give them a new home with our process, and would be very open for dairy producers that hear this this video
Mhm.
to get in contact with and discuss how we can give a next life to their facilities.
Yeah, I hope it reaches exactly the audience that you're aiming for. Uh, so I'm interested in that back-end technology as well a lot. And you mentioned that you are essentially replacing egg white. That is like the most common ingredient in like entire baking industry and whey protein industry, sports nutrition. So is there any other comparison as well? Because I think this egg white comparison gives
Yes,
really tells me exactly what you're doing. So any other
yes.
example you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I think it's very important to understand that we have a highly soluble protein by nature. That means we are not making it soluble, for example, by hydrolyzing it, but it comes already out of the yeast cell in a soluble form. So
Hmm.
it's by nature soluble. That gives a lot of application potential because by default you can also then use it for applications where you need to have the protein for a long time liquid. So besides alternative egg replacement, we are also doing binding of meat. So for alternative meat applications, we use it for sports bars. Sports nutrition in general is very interesting because you can complement a whey protein in the alternative world. And in that sense, we see a lot of potential to bring also the sports enthusiastic people that want to have muscle grow and cell growth with an alternative protein actually happy, make them happy. Yeah, and that's the, I would say, the main parts of what we do. We use it, of course, also in dairy products. We just tested this morning a cheese application. So it's a wide range of application where you can use our protein, and we have it in different purities. At the moment, the prime protein. So this is just a B2C labeling, but we are a B2B company. But our prime mix is actually a 60% protein, 40% fiber mix, and that is ideal also for applications like alternative meat or egg replacement. But we can go further up to an 80-20 mix, which is then more suited for the sports industry and the like. Yeah, that's for the protein, and then obviously we have the two fibers. So the beta glucan, mannan, these are also functional ingredients which have outstanding gelling capabilities, gelling and water binding. So a water binding of 1 to 10, that means it gives very juiciness in alternative meat. By the way, the protein behaves similar like a collagen peptide or collagen protein. So it also doesn't make a sports bar hard. It is softening. And that's an issue in the industry currently, that the alternative proteins are getting hard after a certain period of time, and with our functional protein we can overcome that. Yeah.
It's good that you mentioned about this hardness, because I understand about. So for example, you already addressed the digestibility issue that a lot of alternative protein have, and you also mentioned the binding and solubility of it. So I was about to ask about the taste and texture, because that is the very underlying challenge, and the reason why a lot of companies are struggling to adopt these ingredients. So how about taste and texture of your ingredients?
Yeah, I'm glad you are asking this question because everybody who ever tasted yeast-based protein or yeast extract knows that it comes with a very strong taste and umami, too much umami and bitterness. But actually, we're super happy that we have a taste neutral protein. And our protein is taste neutral because we are having a very specific way how we treat it when it comes to our factory,
Mhm.
and we wash it very intensively and take the bitterness out, and that gives us at the end what we want, something to have neutral in taste. And we were this morning with one of the leading flavor companies in the world, and they made applications with our protein, and we tasted it, and you could not recognize anything out of many different applications they did with it, and it was amazing. With regards to texture, I mean, yeah, like I said, the protein behaves in a similar way like collagen peptides. So it is giving that fluffiness, that softness in applications, but also depending on how much fiber we add to it, you can also create meat texture. You can make it stiffer, stickier, and that goes with the ratio of protein and fibers. And we have a platform of ingredients. So that means we have three isolated ingredients with beta glucan, mannan, and the protein. And we work iteratively with the industry to find the right, let's say, texture together for the application they have in mind. I mean, one of the key issue, for example, in the alternative meat industry is the step of methylcellulose, and that's a step most of the companies do not want to do when they don't have to do it, and they should test our solutions to overcome that step in their production process. And by the way, it also reduces ingredients lists and so on. So I think there is a lot we can offer to the industry, and that's why we call our ingredients the next generation ingredients. So almost a perfect match.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. These sounds like next generation ingredients. So, uh, and I think the good thing is that you are able to customize it based on like what kind of
Yeah,
texture or chewiness or I think taste is needed. So that's also, I mean, a great option because a lot of every food company has different product and different requirements. So I think customization
yeah,
really adds up to the USP of your basically your ingredients. Now you mentioned that it's almost it's tasteless. I mean, it's very difficult to detect that it's yeast, and I'm comparing it with
yeah,
the usual taste of yeast. I know that you were right; it's very umami and it's very
yeah,
intense. So, what I want to understand is basically when you bring in the yeast for production and for processing, and you're using spent yeast, so it's not
yeah.
even fresh yeast
No.
like many other startups that are doing, right? So,
Mhm.
what percentages of that yeast is actually usable and it's actually giving you the ingredients you want, or basically is it like you're able to use it completely because it's spent already? So, what a lot of other companies consider waste, so you are already using that. So, just want to understand,
Correct.
how much, what is the yield out of that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, so first of all, I have to say we are only using yeast that from the brewers that are treating it food grade. So it needs to be cooled, steered, and closed in a tank by the brewer. And that's the precondition of us taking it. Obviously, we have very stiff quality measures at the different points of the logistical chain. But once it arrives at our site and it's active still, because we require active yeast, not dead yeast. And once it arrives at our site, we test the quality, and we also test the dry matter. So how much is the percentage of yeast in the overall liquid form in which it comes. Typically, it's between 12 and 15%. The rest is water, so 85 plus percent water, which we are reusing in the process several times. We are using a reverse osmosis for bringing the water back several times in the production process. But out of the net yeast, I mean, the yield that we currently achieve is substantial because of the three ingredients we take out, and there's literally no residual waste that we have to get somewhere. Um, Most of the cell walls are disappearing in one of the process steps, and yeah, and the rest we can actually put into normal wastewater. And in that sense, I mean, the net yield can always be optimized. There is also nice vitamins in it, which we want to extract
Hmm.
at some point as well. There is residual alcohol, which we want to extract in addition at some point. But at the moment, we focus on the three ingredients.
Okay. What I understand is it the in the form in which it comes it, and after you remove the water, you're able to essentially use the entire thing. Uh,
Correct.
so
Yes.
okay, so that's also great because as you mentioned, there's nothing to throw once you're done with the yeast. So that also
Yes.
reduces your waste.
I
And
mean,
how about?
you always have
Hmm, yes.
certain let's say process deficiencies. I mean,
Hmm.
100% yield is never possible, but we are very happy with the yield where we are, and also with the additional scaling, we expect that is an improvement process also over time. But from a side stream perspective, it's actually not an issue for us.
Okay. And do you see yeasters facing any feedstock issues? Because you mentioned you only there are there are lots of certification you need to take care of, and you have lots of logistical checks at various places, and you're only using a specific type of basically active yeast, only working with specific breweries. So, do you see a feedstock issue coming up in near future when you as you scale?
No, at the moment, not at all, because I think the brewers are also interested, first of all, to get more per ton yeast than they currently get when it goes to the pig farms, and we are able to provide, let's say, a better price towards them, so it has a commercial advantage. But I think it's also for the brewer very important that we help him reducing his CO2 footprint, because we are giving yeast a second life. We have a
Mhm.
very positive CO2 calculation. We did a life cycle analysis, and if you compare the production of a pea protein with the production of a yeast protein, we save 74% CO2. Versus beef, it's in the high 90s. And besides that, we are also reusing the water, like I said before. So for the brewer, there's actually a lot of marketing claims that they can make themselves when
Mhm.
they are working with us on the CO2 and sustainability front. Besides the fact that it's also making commercial sense for them to, if needed, improve their infrastructure such that they can send us the material.
Okay. So basically, even your suppliers have an incentive to scale and to increase their operations because they're getting more value out of working with you compared to,
Correct.
selling it to farms. Hmm?
Yes, correct.
That's
And we are
great. And
also working with a logistics partner who is doing the shipments from the brewers to us. And they have even the capability, subject to contract with the brewer, to help with the necessary investments to cover some of the investments and make some pre-financing on it.
that's great. I think the whole cash flow is working out nicely for you. So that is also great. Okay. So now, like I have almost all the questions and my curiosity is almost settled about everything. Um, what I want to understand is during this, and you also mentioned that when you were solving the technical challenges related to manufacturing and all, you are now uh, protecting your IP as well. So I just want to understand your views about it. Basically, how much of it is protected? What kind of protection are you using? And do you guys have filed patents or other way of ways to protecting it as well?
Mm,
So I'd like
yeah.
to hear that.
Yes, it's a long process, probably the longest process we have in our company to protect the IP. But yes, we filed a patent. We got also a positive approval on all our patent claims. We have 16 claims, basically covers the majority of our process steps. And that all got approved. We are the first and so far only patent in the industry working with yeast that has that stage of approval of a patent. We also localized the patent in the major beer brewing countries in the world. such that we have protection there as well. But
Hmm.
with the patent in itself, you can read the patent and you can try to mimic our process, and you will not be successful because there are some very essential process steps where we have our trade secrets and which are not in the patent as such. And in that sense, it's a combination of things you want to protect and things you want to protect publicly through a patent, but also things you will never disclose to anybody because
Mhm.
yeah, it gives you that ultimate differentiator.
Makes sense. You don't reveal the recipe of your magic potions, of course. It makes
Yes.
sense. uh, and Urs, so this final question is more of like from personally coming from me, because I've
Mhm.
been talking to a lot of founders and CEOs, and what I'm trying to do is learn from them something that I can also implement in my life and in my career. So I saw your history of working experience, and I see that you're working in a space. Which has no crowd. Basically, you are the only one, almost only one doing this. There are some startups trying the same thing, but not exactly as like you, because you are reusing the materials and all. And you mentioned that you it took you almost a decade to solve the technical challenges that you faced. So during all this time and during scaling up your startup and in coming future, did any moment did you feel like maybe this is not going to work out, or maybe man, this is going to be challenging, and I don't think I can solve this challenge, any kind of that giving up feeling? So how did you fight it off?
Yeah, I mean, you were referring to my let's say former life. I was the general manager of IBM in Europe for consulting. I had a business which was several billions and over 30,000 people on the payroll. And now I'm a startup founder. How comes, first of all? And I think, at some point in life, you want to give something back. And for me, it was important to do something that has an impact for our planet and for us consumers and for the world. And that's why I decided to do this venture together with Daniel. Of course, you have other opportunities you can choose from, but for me, this was the right one. And I think, when I compare my former job with the job now, I probably have more sleepless nights now as a startup founder than I had with IBM in a big corporate. And you are asking friends for money, and you are putting yourself under a big obligation to deliver, because there is not just, let's say, you and the company. There is a network behind you that also helps you making it successful, and you feel that obligation as well. And I think that's certainly an emotional challenge you have to overcome. And would I do it again when I found the next company? Probably not. I will probably more try to find institutional investors, but I'm glad we have now both. But especially in the first few days, you need to have people around yourself that you can really trust 200%. And we had that, and we are very lucky with the support we got from our shareholders. And but I never thought about giving up. That was not an option. I mean, we had COVID and we had all these other, let's say, bottlenecks in between us and our journey. But it's important you have a client and consumer focus first of all. So to really make a difference for the consumer, the sustainability as an argument is not going to help you selling products at the end. You need to have good products that help consumers enjoying it, and you should not move away from that North Star. But the way to go there, you sometimes have to pivot. And I think you should not also stick to your first idea when there is another alternative that brings you there in a different way. And I think this agile pivoting on the execution part of the strategy is very important. And that's what we did several times. And yeah, so far so good, but we are not over the hill yet, so there's still more to come. And of course, we still give full gas also for the coming years.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid advice, and I think this is super useful, not just for me. I think almost everyone who wants to venture something of their own and is watching this video. So, thank you for taking me through this, Urs. And with that, I'm at the end of the line of my questions. I really got to know a lot from you, not just about running a startup, but also about alternative protein industry and this whole process. And so, yeah, uh, thank you for joining today and giving
Thank
me
you,
your time.
Shabat,
It was
and thanks for giving the opportunity to present us.
yeah, it was really nice talking to you.